Well, Thayer, we certainly did put the Calypso into many different flight situations, and with the wind that we had a lot of opportunity really to find out what the plane was all about. We had a good time doing it. That was my take on it. You flew it also, so.
I thought it was a great airplane. I thought it handled well, and I was impressed with how it handled the variety of conditions we had a chance to fly it in. I'd be right there with you.
And it got pretty gusty at times when we were flying.
Had some gusts, but we had some still air too. Got a chance to see how it really was, and the still air sink and all that kind of stuff. Well,
let's get into the 5x5 review. We'll start with model characteristics as always. Build as advertised. We gave it a 5 out of 5. I did the build, so I'll take that one from here for just a second. Build as advertised, we had no problems with it. Like I said earlier, in the first part, very low parts count, 3 screws and a piece of Velcro. I didn't screw that up at all. I don't think anybody would. It actually went along quite well. Now, as a side note also, this does have the option for flaps. So what we're going to do with our model at a later date is go ahead and cut those flaps in, and then we'll fly it again and see what it's like, what the characteristics are like with the flaps. And of course, let you people know exactly what was involved with the installation of the flaps. So moving on to finish, we gave it a 4.5 out of 5. There, I think you agree that this is a nice looking plane.
For what it is, for a foam sailplane about this size, there are a lot of them out there on the market. This one has a very smooth finish. It's made of aerosol. The beads are very tight. There's not a lot of texture to it. All the molding pips are on the bottom of the wing, so you really don't ever see them.
We've been noticing that a lot on these foamies, and I'm sure it's the technology is going to keep advancing. The mold pips, as you call them, are getting fewer and fewer, even on sport planes, whatever. The finish of the foam itself just seems to be increasingly getting better, so I would agree with that. Let's move on to power. We gave it a 4.5 out of 5.
I felt the power was absolutely perfectly suited to the airplane.
Yeah, I agree with that.
With a fresh battery, it'll climb nearly vertically, and inevitably there are people who are going to want more.
Well, sure.
But it's got plenty of power, and it'll climb over and over again on the charge. So.
And I've noticed too with this, and I know it's inherent with sailplanes in general, that at lower level or slower speeds you don't quite have the stall characteristics that you would on a sport plane or something. But on a few of your touch and goes, I mean, you were just barely, you were towards the end of, I guess, your inertia, and you still, it just pulled itself right up and out.
Yeah, with no ugly characteristics. It accelerated quickly, was off and flying again.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. Ground handling, we gave it a 4 out of 5.
And the only reason we didn't go beyond that is it's so much fun to shoot touch and goes with it. It would almost be nice if the prop cleared the ground with it sitting at rest. But
I've never seen a sailplane on landing gear, so I don't think that would even look right.
Well, there are some.
I mean, this has got a pseudo landing gear, I guess. I don't know what
it does.
A mono.
And that's very typical, really, of a scale type installation, where it's really just there for landing.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned, you can shoot some touch and goes with it. Just make sure the prop's folded, power all the way off. Even if the prop's hanging down like that, it'll just kick. And the airplane will, you can skip off the ground and go.
Now, of course, ground handling also includes how it handles ground effect. And I noticed when I flew it that even in the wind we had, which of course sailplanes are very susceptible to getting a lot of up and down because they're catching that lift. But I noticed in ground handling, if you, like any sailplane, you had to fly it to the ground. It wasn't going to come down itself.
Or you had to be patient.
Or you had to be patient.
Use a lot of the field.
Exactly.
Like any long wing sailplane, it'll get into that ground effect and float for quite a ways.
And where we were flying, we didn't have the luxury of having a very, very long distance. So I noticed when you pushed it down to the ground, it would hold pretty much where you wanted it to until you wanted to flare, which impressed me because you didn't fight it at all. You just kind of, it locked in, and then you flared when you wanted to, and it just touched. So.
Well, and another nice thing, being a 4-channel airplane, if you're capable, you can kick in a little rudder, cross control the ailerons, and slip it sideways a little, create a little more drag, help it punch down through the ground effect.
Definitely. Durability, 4 out of 5.
It's made of aerosol foam. Very durable, easy to glue. The only thing that I'm even remotely concerned about, and we haven't had any trouble with it, if you crash it, you will break stuff. That's what happens if you really hit it hard. The area in here through the fuselage cockpit area, it's about 6-7 millimeters thick through that bathtub, and I suppose if you land it on the nose, that area is going to act like a crumple zone, and you'll need to stretch it back out and reform it. But you're going to have other issues if you hit that hard.
Exactly,
Normal flight conditions, you can drag a wingtip, spin it around,
Yeah.
ground loop it. None of that's going to bother it.
And I noticed this didn't have a tremendous amount of flex either.
No.
Which I guess would also fall into the durability category, in the air durability. You didn't get a lot of wing hopping even in the wind we were in.
No, and even high-speed dives and stuff, the wings don't,
Exactly,
pull up.
yeah.
You don't have to worry about the tips meeting above
Yep.
the fuselage.
Well, let's move on to pilot experience. We'll start with flight as advertised. We gave it a 4.5 out of 5. There, I'd like to take a couple of minutes in, you've had a lot of experience through the years with sailplanes. Just kind of give me your take on what the Calypso was like to fly. We do have a couple points that we want to make about the flight, so just kind of give us a rundown on that.
Well, first, my experience has been sport flying sailplanes. Not a contest guy, not the big money stuff, but just going out on Sunday fly or fun sailplane kind of stuff. And in that realm, relaxing, fun flight, that kind of stuff, Calypso is a fantastic airplane. And certainly with the new breed of contests where they're doing limited altitude, they've got the chip to shut the motor off when you get to 500 feet or whatever. Even in that realm, I think it's a very competent airplane. You can have a lot of fun with it. The controls are very responsive, full span ailerons, the elevator and rudder are both right there. I found at altitude it was very visible. It's got black spots on the wingtips that really stand out. The sun comes through that foam.
Yeah.
It makes it kind of glow. It's very visible. And it glides very well. You get it trimmed out. That battery is pretty lightweight. It doesn't weigh the airplane down much. And it will really sit and float and cruise along for quite a while, and it's a very enjoyable thing. And if you want to get into a little basic aerobatics, you can do loops and rolls and stall turns and spins and that kind of stuff. All that's good too. Honestly, the only reason I backed off from a 5 on it is we noticed that when we got up high and wanted to dive down, and not straight down, but at like 45 or so, get back down to the field, we found that the airplane would start to roll over and kind of tuck a little bit. It's not uncontrollable. It's not, unless you let it really develop, it's not something to worry about. But it's there. It's not going to come down and slowly pull out like sometimes happens with a airplane that you've trimmed slightly nose heavy. And I believe what's happening is that the tail boom is flexing a little bit. It's pretty stiff, but as you go faster and faster, that downforce on the tail gets stronger and stronger. And I think it's creating effectively just a little bit of down elevator trim at speed, and you can see it increase if you really carry it.
Yeah.
It'll sort of roll over. But it's really not a big deal.
Yeah.
You just need to be aware that it's a possibility. Normal sport flying, normal fun, it's not an issue. But if you let it develop, if you kind of ignore it, it could bite you.
I think it's surprising is what I guess the best way I could.
Yeah, because you don't expect it.
Yeah, when I knew about it when I flew it, so I deliberately, of course, put it into a power off dive, and it just felt weird to watch it. Like you said, it slowly comes on, but when it hits fast.
Well, it accelerates.
Exactly.
It's kind of an exponential
and it's just
thing.
like you're watching
slow,
it, and all of a sudden it's like, wow. You don't expect it to do that, I guess.
But it's not a big deal. The Wing Strong has that nice carbon spar. You can pull back on the elevator. If you really let it go and get going, what you can do, and I did the first time because I wanted to see, once I saw what was happening, I said, let's see, is this really going to keep developing? And it did. I just came in with a little bit of throttle, got those prop blades out. That gave me an effective air brake.
Yeah.
Later when we cut the optional flaps in, you'll be able to bring those flaps down a little bit. Or if we mixed it with, flapper-on type function on the ailerons, we can drop those a bit as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just, as you recognize it's starting to happen, just pull back on that elevator. Don't yank it back, but just slowly add back pressure until you see that starting to recover again. It's really not a big deal.
Yeah.
It's just something to be aware of.
Sure.
It's a characteristic of the airplane.
Yeah.
Not a big deal.
All right, well, flight time, we gave it a 5 out of 5.
Yeah. And I think realistically, we did a power check. We were drawing about a little over 17 amps, and we ran our, through our calculator and RC Flight Source. Full power at that current draw, that battery capacity, you'll flatten the battery in 4.6 minutes.
Sure.
But
it's a sailplane.
You're not going to fly at full power for 4.5 minutes.
Yeah.
What you're going to do is you're going to go 15, 20 seconds, climb up to 2, 3, 4, 500 feet, shut the power off, glide around a little bit, or get down low, low power kind of sport flying, you know, cruising around
Sure.
through, you know, the park, you know, behind the tree at the soccer field, that kind of stuff. I think realistically, in our flights, we were flying easily 15,
Oh, yeah.
18, 20 minutes, and that was in essentially no lift conditions. We had some little bumps, some burbles, but we never were in sustained lift for more than you know, a few seconds at a time. So in decent conditions, you could easily fly this airplane for an hour, assuming you've got some idea of what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, it's a pretty clean airframe. It's nicely streamlined. The decals are on very nice and smooth. They're not creating drag. It's a flyer.
Yeah.
It really is.
All right. Field size, we've got it as a large park, preferably a flying field, I think, to get the most out of it.
Yeah, you want to have room. It's an efficient airplane. You don't want to dive at the ground. If you could fly it, I mean, you could take it down to the local schoolyard, fly off the high school baseball field or something. But that's going to feel like a tight spot, and you're going to end up kind of forcing it down onto the ground to get through that ground effect. It's got a skid plate on the nose just behind the propeller, and we scuffed that a little bit in our testing.
Yep. That's what those plates are for, though.
That's what they're for. And same thing on the tail skid. That's not underneath the stabilizer there. You can see there's a little bump. That's not molded foam. That's a hard plastic piece as well. So that's protecting the fin, or the base of the fuselage and the base of the rudder.
Yeah.
But, you know, give yourself a little room. Go to the larger park. Take it out to the club field.
Yeah, I agree with that. Portability, 4 out of 5.
It's a big airplane.
Yeah.
It's over a 6-foot wingspan. It's 47 inches long. I think that was the number we had.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
It comes apart nicely. You do have to take, because of those set screws on that spar tube, you do need to just back them off a half turn or so you can pull the wings off. You know, fold them flat.
I wouldn't think that removing that set screw and resetting it time and time again to transport it would probably be too good for that. I think at any level, you don't want to chance it. I wouldn't think.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Really?
Yeah, I think if you're worried about it, what you could do if you really wanted to, take a file or a stone or, you know, a Dremel with just take the very tip of the screw off and let it come in and just sort of grab the tube. But you're not cranking that down hard. All you're trying to do is to get it just to catch a little bit to keep it from sliding apart. So I can't see that being an issue for, you know, 2 or 3 flying seasons.
Yeah.
You know, as long as you're not really cranking it down. But if you're doing that, you might, you know,
so you
split the
don't
tube.
suggest using a power drill or anything like that?
Well, only if it's like a 40-volt drill. No, that's not an issue. And the only other thing that would improve portability is if the tail were easily removable. But with that long screw, like you said, you run it in there and you go and it finally draws up tight.
Yeah.
It's not the most convenient way to remove the tail. But again, it'll fit in your car.
Yeah.
You know, if you take the wing off, you can put the whole thing across the back seat of a sedan. If you've got a minivan or SUV, that's not an issue at all.
Yeah. All right. Skill level, we've got beginner, intermediate. Kind of expand on that just for a little bit.
Well, it's a moderately complex airplane. You've got ailerons. It's a 4-channel airplane instead of 3. Most beginners start with 3-channel airplanes. There's just one more thing to think about. The control's a little bit more precise. It doesn't self-level like a 3-channel airplane with a lot of dihedral will. And I don't think you'd have any trouble learning to fly with the airplane if you had some decent simulator time, if you had a friend or, you know, somebody at the local club who could help you out. But there are easier ways to fly.
Sure.
But if you've flown a park flyer or two and you want to move on to something a little more complex, you want to try out a sailplane, it's a great way to go. You're a more experienced flyer if you've been in the hobby for, you know, 2-3 airplanes or 2-3 seasons or 2-3 decades. It's a fun, relaxing airplane to fly, but you can step it up a bit. If you want to, you can, you know, add in a little more power.
There's a little room to grow with this one.
You can yank it around. It'll do some fun aerobatics.
Definitely.
You know, basic loops, rolls, stall turns, you know. It rolls a little bit slow, but...
Knife edge. No hovers.
I wouldn't recommend trying to drag the fin through the grass on your field, but no, it's a fun airplane.
Yeah.
And really for anybody of any level.
Sure.
Beyond first-time unassisted beginner.
Yeah. Well, that wraps up our review of the Flyzone Calypso. If you'd like to see the full review, you can go to tobefly.com. And for our mobile users, you can go to rcflightsorts.com and download our app and take our content on the go. I'm Rob with Two Brothers Hobby.
And I'm Thayer. Thanks for watching.